Welcome back to the Aggression in Dogs Conference. All of the talks are pre-recorded and played right here on the main stage. If you're having technical issues with the live presentation, a YouTube link will be provided in the chat box where you can watch the presentation in another browser window. Professional closed captioning is also available by clicking on the CC button at the bottom of your video window. If you experience any other tech issues during the live presentation, please visit the info desk in the lobby or drop a question in the chat box. Information about continuing education credits, as well as a link to download PDFs of the presentation slides, can also be found at the info desk. Stick around for Q&A time right after, also here on the main stage. And just so you're aware, there will be a slight delay of about a minute or so between the presentation and the Q&A session. If you have questions for Katenna, please enter them into the Q&A box so she can see them outside of the chat box. We also have a lot of prizes to give away. If you are attending the conference live, you can earn points for the contest by engaging in activities such as viewing our amazing exhibit hall. And now on to our next amazing speaker, Katenna Jones, who provides behavior consulting services to cat and dog owners, advises local rescues, and is a teacher for the IAABC, and she speaks internationally. She's the author of Fetching the Perfect Dog Trainer, Getting the Best for You and Your Dog, and regularly contributes to Chewy, PetMD, Dogster, and more. Katenna earned her master's in experimental psychology from Brown University, where she studied animal behavior, learning and cognition with thesis work on canine communication. She's an associate certified applied animal behaviorist, a certified cat and dog behavior consultant, a certified pet dog trainer, and is certified fear-free. She shares her home with her husband, an adopted cat and dog, chickens, and honeybees. I've had the pleasure of hanging out with Katenna at a few different conferences, including the SICA conference in Mexico, where we were able to observe the street dogs and cats. So I'm really looking forward to her talk and how we can help dogs and cats get along when there is a problem. Enjoy the talk.
Hi, welcome to this session on fighting like cats and dogs. I'm Katenna Jones. Thank you for joining me for this session of the Online Aggression Conference. I'd like to talk to you about dealing with interspecies aggression, specifically aggression between a cat and a dog. First, I want to focus on healthy relationships. A healthy relationship is one that is meaningful. There's an emotional connection between both. It's not just one-sided. There's healthy communication back and forth. Both parties have a say in this relationship. They have a say in the interactions, whether we're going to engage in a specific behavior or not, whether we're going to stay together or not. They get to decide. Of course, relationships are going to have ups and downs. There's going to be good days and bad days, but there should be a majority of good days, very few bad days. And the bad days should not be physically or emotionally damaging to either of the party. That is a healthy relationship. And we want to make sure when we're considering these relationships, we as the consultant, that we give consideration to both parties in the relationship. We're coming in most likely as a dog trainer or consultant, and that's going to be our focus. But the cat is on the other side of this relationship. They're not just along for the ride. They have to be considered in your plan as you go forward. And that's kind of what I want to give you some tips about today. So I want to focus on just a couple of quick things on the cat half of this equation. It's just a few random points that I thought would be helpful for you before we talk about dealing with the actual aggression. So first, many of you are going to know this, that yes, going slow is necessary, but it's really important, especially with cats, because the average cat tends to not be as adaptable to sudden change as many dogs are. Of course, there are dogs that are the same way and cats that are great with change, but generally speaking, cats typically need slow change. And if we're working on a relationship, I call these three-legged races. So whoever is the slowest in the three-legged race, whether you or your partner is the slow one, that's how fast you go. You can't go any faster than the slowest one. So whether it's the dog that is having some aggression problems and is slow to de-escalate that aggression, or if it's the cat that's afraid and they're slow to improve their confidence, either way, whichever one is struggling the most is the one that determines how quickly we go. Of course, you can let it go and maybe things will be fine and they'll work out, but maybe not. Maybe a negative association is going to be formed, some sort of unpleasant opinion about the other party in this relationship. And as we know, we can't unlearn the past. We would have to go backward and address any previous associations or opinions that have formed. So I always say it's better to be safe than sorry. So I proceed with these cases and I explain them to my clients like building a house. In the beginning, it's the tedious mixing of the ingredients to pour the foundation. We have to have the right shape. We have to have the ground sturdy to hold this foundation. And everything has to be square and level. And it's really, really tedious. And it's very tempting to cut corners here and there. And you can cut corners and you can put up those wall studs faster and throw on a roof maybe a little bit faster than you could have so that you can quick get to the curtains and the wallpaper, in the furniture. But over time, depending on how many corners you cut and depending on how much external stress there is, if a stressor occurs, let's say a windstorm, or you got a new schedule for your work, either way, it's an external stressor that's impacting this house that we're building. You might start to see cracks and shifts and things breaking, and you can't necessarily just fix that one spot. You may have to tear everything down to the foundation, rip up the foundation and rebuild it, and go slowly and appropriately the way you should have the first time. And in the end, you end up spending more money and spending more time on something that should have been done correctly to begin with. So cut corners, go faster than the animals are ready. Sure, it may work out. Probably not. And chances are you're going to regret it and it's going to end up being a problem. So I always say go slower than necessary to ensure that both parties are on board and doing okay with this relationship. Scent exchange is a common approach that many people make when they're dealing with aggression between a cat and a dog. And yes, it is absolutely important. I think scent is very important to cats on a level that we cannot appreciate. And it's important that we do the scent exchange. So if you're not familiar, for example, the bedding, say we would put a towel on the cat's bed or its favorite spot to sleep, and also for the dog, get that nice and saturated with scent, and then we exchange. So the cat receives the dog's blanket, the dog receives the cat's blanket. Oftentimes, this donated scent is put on the recipient's bedding. I don't recommend doing that, especially for cats. If they're feeling stressed or threatened by that scent and it's put on the place that they feel safest and most secure, that can have repercussions that are unintended and problematic. So I recommend putting the donated bedding in a neutral place, not near the food, not near the bedding, just a neutral place. Once we see that there aren't any major problems, there's no growling, nobody's defecating or eliminating on it, then we can slowly move it closer and eventually put it on the cat's bed or in another place that may be the cat's second favorite place. So the cat is encouraged to lie on it and put their scent on there. And then once everybody's back to normal, eating and drinking normally, eliminating normally, and they've got their scent on the blanket that was donated by the other, then we switch them again. And we rotate like this back and forth so we get the layers of cat smell, dog smell, cat smell, dog smell. And I start to become desensitized to this threatening smell or perhaps scary smell that's intermingled with the smell of my home that I'm familiar with and the smell of me. So that can help to integrate them a little bit, but it's not everything. So a lot of times that's the only step that's made in a dog and cat integration and nothing else is done. So it's a very important step and I don't want to skip it, but I also don't want to end there. There's a lot more that we can do and we're going to get into that. And a lot of it is training. Stress reduction is something that should be done for everyone involved. So if there's aggression from either party, stress reduction for everyone, including the humans. I consider that scent exchange as part of the stress reduction or as part of enrichment. So if you're not familiar with enrichment, there is a lot of cat enrichment resources out there. Like you could check out ASPCA Pro, just comes to the top of my head. And there's a few other places where you can find some good enrichment ideas. But I encourage you to not just focus on food dispensing toys. There's a lot more enrichment that's out there. Training, wonderful time to work on enrichment. That's mental and physical exercise, social interaction, problem solving, sensory enrichment. There's a lot that can happen if you work on training sessions with during this separation time. Vertical spots can help cats to feel more confident, and you may have to, depending on severity, look into nutraceuticals or even behavioral pharmacology. And just to clarify, when I say minimize sources down here, I mean sources of stress. So let's say there's a lot of kids running around, or there's construction going on. Anything we can do to reduce that as much as possible for the stressed animal, we want to make as much effort in that direction as we can. So when we're working on our training, a great time to do that is when they're fully separated. So maybe the scent exchange is going on during this time. And maybe some stress reduction is going on in this time, and training could be part of that stress reduction. When you're working with cats, it's important that the experience be familiar to them. So a familiar location in which to train, a familiar person that's doing the training, any equipment that's involved should be familiar. You want to minimize distractions. As we know, that's important for dogs as well, but for many cats, it's absolutely essential. Training occurs on the cat's terms. So this is like the stereotypical training in the Afghan Hound, or training, some dog that isn't particularly motivated and doesn't particularly care about training. You really have to make an effort. There's a lot of cats that are that way. There are many cats that are more like border collies or Aussies who are really into training. Train me, I love this, and they thrive on it, and everything in between. The spectrum that exists amongst dogs also exists amongst cats. However, a larger percentage of cats are generally less motivated to train than dogs because it's something they haven't experienced throughout their life. It's not something that's familiar to them. So often we have to do it on that cat's terms. I often try to maximize opportunity in their schedule. So for example, if they have most cats will have a scheduled canned food feeding time. That's often when I do my training. Not always, depending on the cat. And we also have to make it worth it. So we have to find a really good motivator, whether that's food or affection or toys. The different motivators are different depending on the individual, just like with dogs. But a little side note, I strongly recommend trying to work with food if you can. If play is the motivator for that cat, just keep in mind, if the dog is aggressive in this relationship and we're playing with the cat, that cat's going to be moving around really erratically. And there might be noises like the bell or the crinkle sound of the toy. And that can be a problem for the dog, and that exposure can be too much. So I try to avoid play as a reinforcer when we're working on fragile relationships like this. We have to make it worth it for the cat so they want to participate. And we have to keep those sessions short. So short sessions, think 1 to 3 minutes, set the timer. I prefer to not have the cat walk away and end the session. I prefer to end the session while the cat is still engaged, so we leave them wanting more. The habit, if one of your clients is going 45 minutes with their dog and the dog ends up getting frustrated during that session, the session is way too long. Same thing with cats, but instead of a 10-minute session with a dog, this is more like a 1 to 3 minute session with a cat that's inexperienced with training. You may be able to get up to 5 to 8 minutes, depending on the cat, but most cats are going to be down toward the 3-minute, maybe 5-minute range. A note on marker training. The training that you're going to do is most likely going to involve marker training. I recommend a physical marker. We're assuming that our cats can hear. If they cannot hear, you can use the light or hand signal markers. If there's deafness and blindness, then that's a whole other can of worms. Just email me and I'll help you. But typically we're going to say that the cat has all of his senses in place. You can use a verbal marker, but I find a verbal marker to be a little bit messier for cats, a little bit too messy for cats, as opposed to a marker like an eye click or a target stick marker that is the same every time. It's a short, precise sound, and I find it to be a lot cleaner for cats in that they catch on to it faster. Less room for error. A lot of cats are very sensitive to noise. Not all cats are going to care, but some will. And so I don't recommend just starting out with box clicker. So start with something quieter like an eye click. There's a target stick, the Terry Ryan click stick that's got an eye clicks type on there, type clicker. A Snapple lid I use for my really sensitive cats, or a mechanical pen clicking sound. So I usually ask my client, okay, if there's a loud noise, say, I don't know, a loud plane goes by really low, is your cat just looking around, curious, or do they take off? If you have guests over and there's a lot of noise, maybe there's a game going on, or we're playing Cards Against Humanity and it's starting to get loud because the wine is kicking in. Is your cat hanging out on the table playing with you, or are they off under the bed? The more sensitive cats, I'm going to go Snapple lid and pen clicker. Cats that aren't particularly bothered by noise, then I'm going to go maybe with an iClick or a regular clicker. If the only thing you have handy is an iClick or a box clicker, and you want to make sure that it's not going to startle the cat during its first exposure, I recommend putting it inside like a baby sock, or wrapping it up in a washcloth or a towel, or even putting it behind your back and rolling it up in the hem of your shirt. So just sort of a way to muffle the sound a little bit, just to make sure they're okay with it. So you click, treat, and you can gradually unroll it from your hem, or bring it around the front from behind your back, gradually make it louder to the point where the cat is comfortable with it, and it's also convenient for the owner to use. So that way we don't start out with a loud click that terrifies the cat, and then we've got a negative association that we have to undo. Mechanics. When it comes to cat training, mechanics is a big one. If you've ever trained a chicken, then you know how important mechanics are. Think of cats as the step between chicken training and dog training, and as far as mechanics and precision and timing. You have to be pretty good with cats. They are a very visual species, so you have to pay attention to overshadowing. If you're not familiar with that, look it up. Your timing needs to be pretty good, and we want to be as clear as possible, paying attention to our schedules of reinforcement. All that sort of stuff is important to cats. So even if you're not working with a cat client right now, if you have a cat, start training them. If you don't, borrow your friend's cat. Right now with COVID, you can't go into shelters and train, but if you can safely get your hands on a cat that isn't going to expose anyone to COVID, start training a cat. Because if you can train a cat, you can most likely train a dog. So even if you don't end up working with cats, it'll improve your dog training skills. Better yet, train a chicken, because all of these things are important with chicken training, critical to chicken training, also with cats, with dogs as well, but that's sort of the hierarchy of importance of these mechanics. Okay, just a couple of tips to get you started with cat training. Next, I want to get into safety. So we've been contacted. There's an aggression case. Just for the sake of argument, in general, we're going to say the dog is aggressing toward the cat and the cat is fearful. That's going to be our baseline scenario as we proceed here. So first thing is management and safety. We have to keep them separated. Most likely your client will have already done this or tried this. If they have, don't scold them. It's a common thing. It's actually sometimes recommended to people erroneously. And none of you who are watching this are ever going to recommend this, because this is bad. We don't want to do this. So if I just took away the cat and replaced it with a fearful dog, would you ever do that? Would you ever put a fearful dog in a crate and let another dog come up and sniff it? I bet you wouldn't. And there's a reason why. So we have to give our cats the same consideration. And just, if you're not sure if this is appropriate for a cat, substitute it in your mind with a fearful dog, and that will often give you the answer of whether this is okay or not. Both of these, not okay. So we're not going to do those. If at any point you see any of these, I'm not going to read through them. You're going to have these on your PDF handout, so you'll have them handy. If you see any of these, this is a full stop situation. I do not recommend proceeding with the case, especially if you don't have somebody who's really savvy with cats on board. Even if you do have somebody who's savvy with cats, if I saw these things, I wouldn't proceed. Say you contacted me, hey, Katenna, this is what's going on with this case. Will you consult with the family? Sure, I'll consult with them to tell them that they shouldn't proceed, because the risk is so great to one of the parties, it's just inappropriate. So you can separate them, management, have your gates and have your doors. But if you've ever separated a multi-dog home where there's serious aggression and somebody's being sent to the hospital, separate management or managed separation is often not enough. There's human error, there's accidents, there's mechanical failure of the latch, there's complacency. All of these things happen, and then that accident is just, it's too big of a risk to take. So if I see this, I typically will recommend that one of them leave the house and go to a different environment. And you can do a separation with management, and maybe the cat just lives upstairs under the bed, and the dog is fine downstairs as long as he doesn't see the cat. Again, substitute cat with fearful dog in your mind. Would you be okay with a fearful dog living under the bed upstairs and everything is okay as long as the other dog doesn't see them? Well, let's say we can't do that because the dog has to go out to go to the bathroom and get exercise. Let's say we litter train this hypothetical dog. Is it okay then? It's not, because we know that that animal is under so much stress that it's a problem. It's just not appropriate for an animal to have to live like that, to endure that. So cats are the same. If we see too much danger, too much risk, it's our job to do what we can to ensure that both parties are safe from physical harm and safe from emotional harm as well. These are the behaviors that tell us that we need to separate and start to do some behavior modification. So this is most likely what's going to be happening when you're contacted. I'm going to go back one. You may be contacted about this type of case, in which case I do not recommend proceeding. A lot of what you're going to be contacted about and what you're going to see is this. So this is the maybe category, possibly. So here we do a full separation, and then we start to work on the relationship and possible integration. So all of these are the maybe behaviors. There's a problem. We can't just let things go, but we have to make some sort of effort. So first, we're going to do our full separation. Typically, it's the cat that is separated because they're smaller. They don't typically have the same amount of exercise needs, and they don't necessarily have to have access to an external door to eliminate. Ideally, they're both going to have the opportunity to rotate into out of a restricted space and into the rest of the house, and vice versa. So the ideal scenario is a dog that is comfortably crate trained in another room with the door shut while the cat is out, and then the cat is in their quiet space, safe room, while the dog is out, and vice versa. That's the ideal. That's not always possible, but that's your goal. The space that the cat is going to be confined to is, it has to have everything the cat needs. It needs to be enriched. We want vertical spots, which helps cats to feel more safe. And this separation is essential for stress reduction, getting everybody calm, and ensure that there's enrichment there until everybody's acting normally. Eating and drinking normally, eliminating normally. I'm not saying hissing, growling, or hiding. Everything looks good. So this is also a perfect time to train because they're separated. Training is great enrichment, good opportunity for that. I say here as long as needed. That's with a caveat. As long as needed to calm, as long as they are continuing to calm. If you've gone a month or two and you're seeing no change or things are getting worse, then we don't keep going. That's not as long as needed scenario. That's, we've tried the separation and it's not getting better. So then we have to look into additional stress reduction, maybe behavioral pharmaceutical or something else that we haven't tried yet. And once all of those are exhausted, then there's your answer. So as long as needed, with the understanding that I mean as long as you're seeing improvement, and especially if you are using medication, it takes a while for that to kick in and get the right dosage and whatnot. So this is something that we don't rush. We keep them separated until they're both calm, happy, and doing well in their separation. So first, I want to have a full separation. So that means a physical and a visual separation. Sometimes there is the a physical separation, but there's a little gap under there that maybe the cat peeks under, or their paw reaches out, or the dog looks under there and can see the cat. In those cases, I recommend a draft stopper. So if you can fit 2 fingers under the door, then we need to mind the gap. We need to close that gap. And the purpose of this is not so that they can't smell each other. They can smell each other. We don't, that is not a question. This is more to enhance that physical and visual separation so that we can have controlled exposures, have more control over the exposures. Here's a few different ideas for you to consider. I have had a case where some folks put an aluminum draft stopper, nailed it to the bottom of their door. Cat just ripped it off like it was no big deal. So depending on the cat, you may have to get creative. When you have done your full separation with the gap blocked, then we have to start working on our controlled exposure. So typically what I'll do is do the exposure. I'll remove the draft stopper, do an exposure session, which we're going to talk about later, and then replace the draft stopper. At the next repetition, remove the draft stopper, do my exposure session, return the draft stopper. As we're doing that, as things progress, we're going to eventually get to the point where we want to do some visual exposure. Maybe not physical yet, maybe, depends on where you are in your progress, but here are some examples. I live in New England. We have a lot of French doors in old Victorian homes. You can cover those with newspaper or cardboard, with using painter's tape. I have some that use towels or sheets to cover that so that the cat can't visually see, the dog and cat can't visually see each other. Some people use cardboard, whatever. In these cases, I really like to have the frosted film, the kind that is non-adhesive or it's adhesive free. So if I'm doing my visual exposure, I can peel off one of those panels, do my exposure session, and then put the panel back. So they're separated when the owner is not there to do training, visually separated, and then they're visually exposed during a training session, and then the visual block is back. I hope that makes sense. On the left is an example of using a towel to drape over there and having a gate stacked so the cat can't just jump over, the dog can't just jump over the gate and get to the other side. You sometimes will just start with just opening the crack just a little bit, even with the towel there, so that we can work on backing away from the space, calming down with the door open a crack, just to get that potential opportunity, calm down our behavior around that. So when the door opens a crack, the cat might take off or the dog might charge the door. And maybe we just work on opening and closing the door a crack and get everybody calm and comfortable with that. And then we slowly open, and then we slowly do some visual exposure, and then everything is replaced when we're not there to control their contact with each other. Keeping in mind, when you're using your baby gates for your separation, cats are liquid. They can get through a lot of stuff. So if their head can squeeze through it, their body can squeeze through it. A lot of the vertical baby gates with the vertical bars, cats can just go right through there without a problem. You can either have the owner zip tie cardboard to it so that as the door swings, the cardboard can go with it, or you can use zip ties to tie that, or you can just use zip ties and create horizontal kind of bars using the zip ties between the vertical bars to create a barrier that the cat can't get through. Keeping in mind, as you do this, you may be creating a ladder for the cat to climb up to get over the barrier, over the baby gate from their side and climb over to the other side. So you have to be careful with how you set this up, keeping in mind that cats are liquid, but cats are also monkeys. So they can climb over a lot of stuff. We have to keep this in mind. So the one on the left, that is stacked baby gates. That's probably the one that my clients use most commonly. And it's stacked during our visual exposures, and then the door is shut otherwise, and the baby gates are gone. And we put the baby gates back, do our visual exposure, open the door, do our visual exposure, close the door, and then we go about our day. This cat needs 3 stacks. So typically it's going to be 2, but a lot of cats are going to need 3 baby gates stacked. Right now with COVID, it's really hard, but secondhand is a very good way to get cheap baby gates, like yard sales or donation centers, Facebook Marketplace, stuff like that, because people have babies that grow up and they don't need the baby gates anymore. But right now with COVID, that's a little bit different. So just keep that in mind for the future. So stacked triple baby gates. You can also use on the far right a screen door, but you're going to want to replace that screen or cover that screen with a metal mesh. So a good one is hardware cloth. It's 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch welded wire hardware cloth. Because of COVID though, right now, keep in mind, some of that metal mesh might be hard to find because everybody is suddenly a chicken and a duck farmer. So this mesh that you use to make their coops is selling like hotcakes. So you might want to consider putting some sort of metal mesh on that screen because either the cat or the dog may blow through it. A little trick that I came up with that's a bit odd, but it works, is 2 pressure gates with a walkthrough. So if you have those, put one upside down. So you can kind of see, I just turned the picture upside down, and you can see if you zip tied all of this stuff together, how it would be just a door. So if that gate has to be up long term, and the owner has to pass back and forth between these doors, often it's, maybe the cat is being kept in the office, for example, and the owner needs to go in that office. Taking down 3 baby gates and putting 3 baby gates back up is just not realistic. That's going to make the chances of successful resolution of this case much less likely. So we want to make it as convenient as possible. And there are plenty of gates that just attach to the wall and they swing wide open and they go very high. So all kinds of options. Just consider squeeze through cats, the liquid cats, and the monkey cats that can climb anything. All right. During our separation, and I'm going to explain how this separation and exposure work. I touched on it a little bit, but I'm going to get into more detail. Some training that you might want to consider during this separation is stuff that you may need during the exposure. So if the dog has shown aggression and there's concern about bite, then I'm going to do muzzle training. If the dog is not comfortable in their crate or is particularly agitated whenever they see the cat, or it might be a young dog that wants to play with the cat, then I'm going to work on calming behaviors in the crate, relaxing in the crate. I might need to work on leash skills for the dog because I'm eventually going to do, hopefully, if everything goes well, physical exposure, where I can't have the dog at the end of the leash choking himself and have no clue how to be on a leash because they've never truly been leash trained. I want to make sure that the dog is comfortable on that and is familiar with leash training. I may need to leash train my cat. So that would be in cases where the cat is the aggressor, where the cat is the one that's moving forward. That's the only scenario that I would use a leash and a harness for in a cat, for a cat in a cat-dog relationship. If the cat wants to run away and hide, they're always free to do that. So I will never use a leash and a harness to prevent them from running away. That is only to prevent them from aggressing forward to the dog. So sometimes the dog is afraid and the cat is the aggressor. In that case, I would apply. And if appropriate, relaxation on the mat. So just chilling on the mat while the cat is moving around in your space. Those are skills that I want to plan toward. So I'm going to start planting the seed for that now during this exposure, this separation time. Okay, so that is our safety separation time. So everybody has all of their needs met, everything is enriched, stress reduced, and they're getting their training done so that we are starting to get skills in place for working on our integration as we go forward. And that might be where you are starting to work with a vet behaviorist, or maybe you bring a cat behaviorist in to help you. If things are progressing, then you keep going. And this is where we start to work on our exposures. So the first exposure is that scent exchange that we already talked about. The second is the door. So you've got it blocked underneath by the draft stopper. So we're going to, let's say we're going to use, we're going to use canned food. So I'm going to have my special scheduled canned meals. I'm going to pull away the draft stop. Cat is going to get their canned food on their side. The dog is going to get their special food on their side. Over time, we're gradually going to move closer and closer to the door. We might need to use leashes for this to control the animal's movement back and forth. And we're going to slowly control how far they are from the door, having to be calm. So if either are afraid, they're too close to the door. If either is aggressive or agitated on high alert, can't focus, too close to the door. So we stay at a distance where they're calm, cool, collected. That is during the training session. The draft stopper goes back the rest of the time, comes out during a training session, goes back the rest of the time, and so on. Then we start working on contact. So visual contact. for example, taking the film off the door. They get to see each other. You do your training session, put the film back for the rest of the time. During your training session, take the film off, exposure, put the film back, so on. Or perhaps you have the towel on the baby gate. Maybe you lift the towel, do your exposure, put the towel back, and so on. And during this exposure, let's say we unblock the door and both of them are right on their respective sides of the door. They're calm, relaxed, we're ready to start working on visual. We go all the way back to the beginning, and then we start doing the visual exposure and bringing them closer and closer to the door until they can be cool, calm, and collected on their respective side during visual exposure. And then I'm going to open it up, and then I'm going to open the gate, and we start doing physical exposure, so closer and closer. Your cat or dog may not be able to get right up to the door, right up to the barrier during these exposures. It might be the best you can do is 3 feet for the cat. Okay, then that's as close as you get. So you might need to proceed through the visual exposure and physical exposure, knowing that 3 feet is the closest they're going to get. That's okay. This might be, we're looking at a cohabitate, tolerate relationship here. And if they can't get beyond that, then as long as everybody's calm and safe, then you can proceed. Then once we start doing our physical stuff, once the gate starts to open, that's where the leashes come in. And we start working on that distance. So we're going to begin those exposures at a guaranteed distance where we know they are cool, calm, collected. Gradually move it closer. So for example, this is the cat's side, or the dog's side, and they're moving their meals closer and closer to the door. And then when the meal is over, the draft stopper would go back. So we try to find the kryptonite to use during these sessions, the things that they cannot resist. We want them to be relaxed. And this is where I work on look at, look away, or engage, disengage. And I proceed until they understand the game of, I have to look at the other, say I'm the cat, I have to look at the dog and then look away, and then I get my mark, and then I get my treat. So it's the typical look at, look away that you would do in dog reactivity that I'm assuming you're familiar with. And again, at each exposure, you go all the way back again, and then you move closer and closer as the pet can handle it. This is a case where the Doberman was really intent on the cat. So we started out using toys rather than the cat because I felt that it was too dangerous to expose the dog to the actual cat. I advised them that I don't think this is going to work itself out. In the end, it did not, but we had to start, and they needed to know that they tried. So in this case, we had the gate up, and you're going to see movement under the door that is a toy. And the dog is at the point where they have to look at the movement and then look away in order to get the reward.
Quick. Quick.
This is the same scenario, but in this case, the barrier is going away. So the dog is off leash. They're free to move about the cabin. This is not an actual cat. It's just a toy. The cat is in a whole separate area of the house for this. The cat typically is kept in this room. So the dog thinks it's the cat, but during these sessions, the cat is taken away and the draft stopper is removed. But when the cat's living there, there's a draft stopper in place. So in this case, we're going to remove that barrier to really see where the dog is in this training skill.
You have to actually look. Quick. And you can open a little more. Quick. And then I'll have you open a little bit. Quick. Like a quarter of the way. Wide enough for Anubis to squeeze through if he needed to. Quick. Good.
Here is an example of that proximity. So this is the visual exposure. We're slowly moving the bowls closer and closer. In this case, I'm focusing more on the dog. The cat isn't working on the look at, look away. The cat's only focus is the proximity. But the dog, I'm working at, look away. So they get trained to look at, and then they get trained to look at, look away, mark, feed, look at, look away, mark, feed. Here's another example, but in this case, I'm kind of upping the ante. So we're assuming that they're comfortable on either side of the gate. And now it's time to add in some movement. So the cat just sitting there quietly looking at and looking away or eating out of its bowl is one thing. The cat moving is something else entirely. So in this case, we have an X pen for safety, and we're certain that the dog has shown zero aggression. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing this without more safety in place. And that says proximity. I'm not sure in the recording if I'm going to be covering up the word proximity right there. So in this case, we're getting the cat moving toward, moving away. And the dog's job is to look away from kitty movement. So at this point, just looking at the cat and looking away from the cat while it's still does not get paid. They only get paid if the kitten is moving.
It's really cute, isn't it? Moving. Well, you were already looking away, but.
Here's another example, and this is movement coming directly toward the dog, and that's the one that we were most concerned about. So now if the cat is just hanging out and the dog looks away, doesn't get anything. If the kitten is just moving around and the dog looks away, no longer gets anything. In this, the cat is moving directly toward the dog, and that's when the dog has to look away in order to get payment.
Look at the snacks, little kitty. Good job.
Good girl.
Here's an example of go to mat training with a cat. I like this for cats that are fearful or cats that are really stressed out, maybe more assertive. So if we see an interaction happening, oh, it looks like there's going to be a little altercation here. I see some fur going up. The dog's minding his own business and the cat's looking upset. Then I might send the cat to the mat, or I might send the dog to the mat, or both. So dog, go to your mat. Cat, go to your mat. And if we can replace that uncertain behavior, because relationships have good moments and not so great moments, right? It's not always peaches and cream. Sometimes there's disagreements. If we can intercept that potential altercation and send everybody to their mat for pleasant things, then we can start to create great associations just as they happen in everyday life. So it's not just the dog going to the mat. We can train the cat to go to their mat as well.
Go to your mat. Go to mat.
Here's a skill that I like. It is target training to follow. So this is a great way to work on training a cat to go to mat. A lot of times I'll have the mat or have the place be on top of a cat tree. And if the cat isn't yet there where they can go verbally, if I say go to place and the cat can't run to its place, I might just break out the target stick and guide the cat to its place. So if it's, the cat is looking stressed or it looks like the dog might be starting to get a little playful, rather than picking the cat up and moving them away or shooing the cat away or punishing the dog or telling the cat to go to its place, but it can't because it's not fully trained yet. That's where this can come in as a little bit of a helper. Or maybe the cat is a little too nervous and he knows how to go to place, but this is just a little bit too big of an event. I can't do it right now. We might be able to break out the target stick and use it as a lure to get the cat to move to a different location. And I also use this with dogs that are location guarding. So if a cat is approaching the dog's bed, so I'm going to set that up and have the cat follow the lure toward the dog's bed, turn, move away from the dog's bed, click and treat for that. So we can use this lure to relocate the cat and to train them to walk away from the food bowl, walk away from the bed if we're dealing with a resource guarding dog. I hope that's clear. Here is a fearful cat. You'll see there's a dog in the crate, and this cat was afraid of the dog and working on going closer to the dog. So you'll see the cat kind of look at the dog every once in a while. And the training sessions were just go to your place, and the place is on top of the dog's crate. So the cat's not so afraid that he's non-functioning. He's just a little uncertain. So this is a great way to train the cat that it's great to approach the dog. Nothing scary is going to happen, and it's a fun game. So it's just a little bit of a movement proximity exposure that you could try. Stay and come. I teach come a little bit differently from this, but I know a lot of trainers do teach stay and come this way. And this is a great one to integrate with mat training. So go to your mat, stay. I'm going to get the dog on the leash, take them outside. Okay, come. Or maybe you use your target stick to lure them. So you can kind of see how all of these words, we teach them these individual words, we can start to link them together in sentences to create more complex behavior that allow us to manage the cat and the dog in the same space.
Sit. Stay. Stay. Come. Good boy. Yeah.
Once you have worked on your exposure and you have these various skills in place as you progress, how do you know when to move forward? So at each exposure, what I start to do is I'll have the exposure, let's say remove the visual block, and we're allowing visual exposure. I'm going to do the exposure with my kryptonite, with my reward, and then I'm going to leave it up or leave it open for longer and longer periods of time after the training session. And as that time increases, my helicoptering or supervision is going to go down a little bit as everybody is comfortable with it. And then I'll cover it up later. So instead of having the visual block open just for the exposure session, I keep it open for another 10 minutes, another hour, another 3 or 4 hours. And over time, those exposure sessions start to overlap, and then we can just remove the visual block altogether. And then we start to use physical. So maybe I keep the gate open for a little bit longer, and I just hang out with the leash. Maybe I'm reading my book, or I'm hanging out in the room. So the time starts to increase as the direct supervision starts to decrease. Maybe they're at the point where they can drag the leash and everything looks good. But then we separate when we can't be there to monitor. So let's say I have to, I don't know, run to the grocery store, then I'm gonna put the visual block back up. I'm gonna put the gate back up so that we have nice safety separation when you can't be there, like maybe a conference call, or you're out of the house, or you're asleep, or otherwise not able to pay attention. So we allow for appropriate interaction depending on where they are, and then appropriate separation if you can't be there to ensure safety. Our goal, of course, is to have them napping together in these adorable pictures. So, they can have their own Instagram page. And if you have a case where you're being called in because there's aggression between them, don't even shoot for that. That is not your goal. The one on the left, where they're within a couple of feet of each other and everybody's happy and relaxed, that is phenomenal. If you get that far, gold star. Typically, I say coexisting in the same household, neither of them being distressed or stressed, but tolerant of each other, and with significant periods of joy and happiness. So that is my goal. There's the really good one on the left, that's fantastic. The one on the right, don't even mention that to your clients because the chances of that happening are very slim. Possible, but slim. So to review what we talked about, we want to make sure that we have them separated so that they can get used to the smell of each other, and we slowly start to expose them visually and physically. We have our safety points in place so that there's no accidental escapes. We might have to stack our gates so the cats can't climb over, or block the bars so the cat can't squeeze through. And then we work on desensitizing and counter conditioning them to proximity from each other through the barrier, then visual contact, then physical contact, and then we maybe need to start working on the movement like we saw in some of those videos. Over time, we gradually increase the amount of exposure that they have, the time, the duration, while decreasing supervision. And it's important to remember to not get greedy. We have to make sure that we go at the pet that is struggling the most at their speed. It should be slow. Expect probably months. I would say rarely is it going to be weeks, mostly months. Think 6-8 months if it's severe enough that they contacted you for help. In some cases, they contact right away because there was one growl from a cat and that was it. They separated and contact you. In that case, it might be weeks. Depends on how long it's been going on. If you need professional assistance, there are resources out there that are available. There's certified cat behavior consultants through the IAABC, if you're not familiar with them. And there's also applied animal behaviorists through the Animal Behavior Society. And of course, veterinary behaviorists are excellent resources in many of these cases. And that's it for the session on interspecies aggression. I hope that you enjoyed. I'd be happy to take your questions. If I'm not able to answer something, or if something pops up later on, there's my contact info. I invite you to contact me, follow me on social media. I try to have equal cat and dog content. And you can also go to my website and follow my blog. Again, I try to have equal cat and dog content. And I'd be happy to assist if you have any further questions. Thanks so much, and I hope you enjoyed.